Welcome back to Flipping Pages, Stirring Sauces. For those of you who are new, welcome. And for those of you who are returning, welcome back. As I've said before, it's an unusual topic for this platform, but it's born out of my love for cooking, baking, eating, reading, writing, and being a mom. And as I've said before, I will be featuring some of my secret recipes later on, and we'll be actually cooking something with you. I will also be featuring some of my own books, but for now, we're featuring this book called Spiritual Messages Channeled Through Me. It's written by my sister Denise Green, and she's given me full authority to present it here in its entirety on this platform. And I must apologize ahead of time because I'm not a perfect person. So I will misread sentences and I will mispronounce words, but I will do my best to correct them. And the book is available on Amazon, but you can also contact me. My email address will be in the description, so you can contact me through there, and I will put you in touch with Denise, and she will make sure that for any of those who want to purchase a copy, or well, that can be worked out with her. So last time we left off on chapter 12, so we're going to pick it up today at chapter 13, entitled The Retrieval. And we're just going to dive right in. The retrieval. I just want to make sure that that is the right chapter. I believe it is, but I want to be absolutely sure. Yes, we did the trip. So now we're doing the retrieval. And it's a fairly long chapter, but I'm going to do my best to get through it in a timely manner. And this is Denise, the writer, speaking. In this chapter, more than in others, it seems names and titles and labels are peppered with quotation marks because as a descendant of slaves and as one who lives in the unfortunate effects of formal black slavery, I can tell you that what is considered a slave by a non-slave is not what slave is to the being labeled slave. That is, although to the one labeled or titled master, the other is owned as property, chattel, meaning movable goods that are tangible, movable material goods. Intellect and spirit do not qualify as chattel because they are immaterial, not tangible, not physical, as we know matter in the mind of the owned. She is never owned, evidenced by the fact that she has a mind which is not her brain, but is her intangible thinking center. Though she may work ceaselessly until the skin of her fingers separates from the flesh, and the fruits of her labor that cause the deformity are enjoyed by the one labeled owner, master. She is never owned, not at her core. The reality of her master is not her reality. The reality of the social environment around her is not her reality. Where is your proof, Denise? Denise is about to give her proof. If she or he or they, the slaves, believed in the master-slave inescapable, inescapable relationship under which they lived for over 400 years, over 400 years, generation after generation, born into the system of abject brutality. I, in my black skin today, would not be the one to decide when I eat, what to eat, when to get out of bed, to go earn the salary that I use to buy the food I eat. Nevertheless, I live in a world where at every turn I am told verbally and subliminally that I am not fully human. Thus, as the writing instrument of these stories, I cannot, will not write as though my mind accepts the labels designed to put me in a category to make my brain believe that I am something I am physically, mentally, socially, and spiritually not. Being told that I am what others perceive me to be or would like me to be does not change who I am. In short, the quotation marks around mistress, slave, subhuman, master, girl, yard hand are placed around these words to send a clear statement that I will not perpetuate the thought process that is designed to keep my mind in the bondage from which my body has been somewhat freed. I will not feed a master-slave mentality when I am so acutely aware that there is only one master. Why would I feed a master-slave mentality when the mastermind behind this evil mindset knows full well that his master against whom he rebelled is the only master? 6 days it took for them to arrive in Baton Rouge, a day longer than Beruze had calculated. It is late evening, and as he had done when he wanted to enter other towns, he waits until dark and tightly secures his captive in the bed of the wagon before he mingles with the locals. Having cleaned himself up quite well, he enters a saloon, orders a drink for himself, and tells the bartender to serve himself one from the banknote he lays on the counter. Trying not to appear too obvious, he visually scouts the place for the man with the twitching mouth. No one with that defect catches his eye. He opens up further conversations with the bartender. Say, where are the slave pens around here? Interested in getting me some slaves for my farm. The bartender pauses before answering, wanting to give useful information to the kind fellow who bought him a drink, giving Beruze more time to further stipulate his needs. I'm looking for reputable dealers. Don't want no problems with anyone coming back to me about ownership of runaways. Well, Louis La Rochelle just brought in a fresh batch a few days ago. Most of them are already gone, though. Had buyers for some before he even got them here. That's him, all right. Beruze recognizes the name L. LaRouche from the receipt detailing the sale of his family, the receipt he had forced from Blytis. Where can I find him? His pen is not too far from here. When you go out the doors, just go to your right, and he cuts his speech. Hey, he raises his chin. Look who just walked in. The bartender waves him over, though he was on his way to the counter anyway. La Rochelle is not a friendly-looking guy. Seems to be preoccupied with the worry of his business. He sits down and immediately orders the regular. Takes his drink in one swallow, sets his glass for another, and only now turns his attention to Beruze, as if to ask, "And what can I do for you?" The bartender opens the conversation in a cordial manner, smiling, a natural smile before he makes an attempt at an introduction. This here is Mr. Brunel, Beruze offers. Mr. Brunel from the bartender again draws a blank. Jackson, Mississippi. Beruze fills in the blank. This is Denise speaking here again, the writer. Never mind that Jackson was not so named until well over 100 years after the date my storytellers gave to me. If my storytellers experienced that place as Jackson, then Jackson it is. One of the benefits of writing fiction, I suppose. That said, at the risk of sounding like a total lunatic, I am told to tell you that time is not linear. It happens concurrently, back and forth, and in circles. It happens in and out of our order. Our is in quotations. Our order. Does the earth on which you live keep moving in a straight line, or does it go around in a circle? Does it sometimes tilt up and tilt down and even flip? It does, all of the above, which are bold statements for a person to make who knows nothing about astronomy. The bartender nods, not needing to repeat the information, and continues. He is interested in buying some slaves. I told him about the fresh batch you brought in the other day. Well, the batch isn't so fresh anymore, but I am sure you can find some to fit your needs. A good whipping is all they need to get the laziness out of them. Beruze is not sure how to broach the subject of inventory without raising suspicions about the particular slaves he is interested in buying. He listens for an opening and gets one after Lacharel's next statement. Can't even give some of them away. He takes another drink before they die on you. Any that you think is about to die on you, up to the 8th or 9th, I will take off your hands for a good price, of course. The words take off your hands and price softens La Rochelle's countenance in that, sensing the prospective buyer's desperation, he intends to take full advantage of the weakness in this seeker, whom he sees as a sure buyer. Whatever he is after certainly can't simply boil down to buying slaves that are likely to soon die on him. Thinking he is at an advantage with his buyer looking for such a good deal that he is willing to buy the rejects, he is ready to do business with Beruze. As I said, a good whipping is all they need to get the laziness out of them. Well, depending on the price, I will take 3 of the males you think are likely to die on you. Sometimes all they need is proper food and fresh air. He is desperate enough to buy them without even seeing them. Lacharel reasons with himself before repeating his sales pitch for his unsaleable chattel. More like all they need is a good thrashing, I say. Choosing to stay focused, Beruze gets to the point he really aims to reach. I will also take the 3 females from the unsaleable lot, remembering the runaways' mention of a third child for whom Ventize. I had a conversation with Denise and asked her how to properly pronounce this name because I was saying Ventisy, but her name is Ventize, for whom Ventize was caring. He adds, and any children you might have. The seller pulls out his listing from his leather sack. Beruze's heart is beating as though it wants to pop through his chest. He sees Anaru standing behind the bar. Think! And is now overshadowed by calmness. It takes Beruze a moment before he focuses on what the seller has to say as he unrolls his price list and then points thereon. This is where the bid starts at auction. Since they didn't sell, although they have been available for only a very short time, I can give you whichever you want for slightly below the starting bid. Beruze Peruses the list for a description and age of his family. They are not listed. He reconsidered his eagerness to buy from a supply that may not include his family. Maybe I should take a look at your stock before I buy any. Sure, but not missing an opportunity to sell off his rejects. He encourages Beruze, but the only one you wouldn't want is the little boy who curls up in a corner and won't eat with the rest, prefers to keep calling for his mama and dada. At this bit of information, Beruze's tongue gets heavy in his mouth. Think. Honoru sprinkles his golden flecks as he reminds Beruze not to be too hasty in this quest. Where does he fall on the list? He doesn't. It would be a waste of time for me and for the buyers. A buyer took the mother and the sister but didn't want him. Now I wish I had just thrown him in with the lot for almost nothing. It seems I am going to get nothing for him anyhow. Well, how much would you take for him? I don't see why you would be interested in him when there are much more useful ones, but make me an offer. He continues to focus his thoughts on the boy. Certainly, his true target can't be that useless consumer of my resources. If it weren't for that female forever coddling him, grabbing food for him, trying to get him to eat my food, I would have. What about others that would make good farmhands? Beruze asked, not wanting to appear too fixated on the boy. Oh, there's a good lot. He points to the names on the list. There is this one and this one. Not really caring which name Beruze gets, he concludes, there are your 9. And the boy, Beruze asks, I'll throw him in if you buy the lot. Tally up your lot and set a price for the boy. He shrugs. All right, it's up to you, and starts his calculation there. He taps the paper with his pen to indicate his price, signaling Beruze to make his next move. Beruze looks at the list. He sees the name, Abel La Rochelle, at the very bottom in the left column. The next column he sees the gender, and in the next the age, followed by a description in the next, and the price to the very far right. He controls his emotions. That's a hefty price considering you're willing to throw him in for free. La Rochelle simply gestures with a quick upturned open palm, offered to Beruze to let him know that the next move belongs to him. All right, Beruze concedes, briefly turning both palms up. Now that they have settled on a price with no issues raised about the prices of the other slaves, Beruze signals a hand to the bartender who just served a drink to another customer. I need a witness here. Sure, the bartender obliges. La Rochelle interjects to find out if the currency is present. Do you have all of it with you? He gets a one-word answer. Yep. The bartender looks at the bill of sale and looks at Beruze and asks, Mister, are you sure you want to do this without even looking at the stock? I am sure, Beruze answers without a perceptible doubt. The bartender hands the list to La Rochelle and beckons for him to sign. He signs. Beruze signs, and the bartender shakes his head before he too signs. Beruze looks around before he discreetly removes a money stack from the inside of his clothing. I trust you will find more than your price in there. He hands it to La Rochelle, who, instead of counting it, merely discreetly leafs through the contents of the stack and is more than satisfied with what he finds therein. He nods to the bartender and slides the bill of sale to Beruze. He is itching to find out who bought his wife and daughter, but he is determined not to raise suspicion, at least in his own mind, as the inflated price he just paid for rejected chattel would definitely raise suspicion in most sellers, and in this sale, which almost certainly would have turned out differently were it not for the seen and unseen forces, Doreni, Anaru, Ani, and her host of other angels interceding on his behalf. I will be by in the morning with my wagon to collect my property. By the way, who bought the mother of the boy? La Rochelle considers its present buyer's generosity and decides, I don't think there's any harm in telling you the widow, Tilda Perez, bought them for a fair price. If you're thinking of offering her the boy, she lives over in Pindas Meadows, just west of here. Frankly, I was thinking of dropping the boy off myself. Heard the mother isn't being productive because she keeps crying over him. Takes time, I guess. Getting this bit of invaluable information. Beruze now knows he can collect his son immediately and then retrieve his wife and daughter. He beckons a thank you and now does not seem to care much if his cover is blown. On second thought, I think I will walk over and have a look at my purchases tonight. I hear your pen is close by, so please just tell me how to get there. I'll walk there with you, La Rochelle offers, instead of giving Beruze the simple directions. Beruze nods to indicate that he is not opposed to the company, gives the bartender a very generous tip, a nod accompanied by a sincere thank you, and turns to leave. La Rochelle, too, is quite generous in tipping the bartender. In his walk to the slave pen, he does not let his guard down with La Rochelle, nor does he leave himself careless for anyone else who might have observed his transaction in the bar. He walks past slaves in the pen, grown males, grown females, adolescent boys and girls, to find his boy curled up in a corner, a woman sitting beside him. She pierces Beruze with her eyes as though she has an intention to protect the boy. In stooping to gently soothe him, he calls the boy's name softly. Abel? He's about to tell him it's Dada! The boy exclaims after lifting his head, and in one swift motion, flinging his body and arms around Beruze's neck. Your Dada? Yes, my son, your Dada. He has already swooped the boy up in his arms. The woman realizes her work as the boy's self-assigned protector is done. La Rochelle is dumbfounded. I knew you had an interest, but I never would have thought. My boy, Beruze tells him, through the tears that flow uncontrollably from him. Tears the boy wipes away with his shirt tail, a shirt his mother made for him with love, a love that causes Beruze to lose what little composure he had managed to maintain. Continuing, my wife, my son, and my daughter. He kisses the boy's face. Disregarding its unclean state, he kisses the boy's hands before he rubs them in his. He puts the boy to his chest and feels him with the appreciation that it is something he gets a second chance to do. In the heat of the moment, he said too much about his relationship with his family. There could be serious repercussions for claiming a slave as his wife. Luckily for him, the present company interprets his declaration of wife to mean his favorite slave, and his affection for the son he is cuddling to be no different from that felt for a well-loved pet animal, a dog, cat, horse, or donkey that was lost and now is found. Oh boy. Beruze walks out of the pen, cuddling his son to his chest. La Rochelle follows him out. Look, if they mean that much to you, I can help you to buy them back. Beruze's ears are pricked up. Beruze's ears are prick up. La Rochelle continues. It's late, but if you wait until morning, I can. No, Beruze interrupts him. We go now. If you want to help me, we go now. All right. We'll go now, but you know, yes, I know, you're free. That does not settle it. Beruze's eagerness to retrieve his family caused him to put too much of his fate into the hands of this slave trader, who, for all he knows, could be just as devious as his brother and Blytis combined. Being able to see the danger of his decision from an angle we human beings cannot, his primary guardian angel and his two guides step into his sphere to show him the danger. They give him a vision. In an oval light, he sees his lifeless body in a swamp near the river along which he traveled. It is being robbed by La Rochelle. Abel is standing over him, crying. As La Rochelle leaves, he uses his foot to push the boy aside. The light shrinks to darkness. The oval light closes up behind the veil of darkness. And really, that is all the difference our world is from theirs. Darkness, spirituality, darkness, literally without the sun. That veil of darkness we see is a reflection of our world. We see them as coming out of darkness, when in fact we are the ones in darkness, separated from the world of the heavenly spirit beings by a thin but powerful veil, a veil that cannot be penetrated unless a being from another sphere allows it, or unless you go there while your mortal body is asleep. That last verse is Denise, the writer, speaking. Another method guides. Okay, all of this here that I'm about to read is Denise, the writer, speaking. Another method guides and angels from another side use to protect us in the obstruction method. Is the obstruction method. Have you ever tried your hardest to get to a chore or to get somewhere, and many small things are thrown in your way to prevent you from getting to that chore or to keep you from leaving home or wherever? Why? It is the obstruction method. Sometimes we see the outcome, sometimes arrives at your home to deliver a very important package when you should not have been there. It happened to me. A check from the bank when I had refinanced my home. Within an hour after I ended up staying home from work, I was having so much difficulty getting past my routine preparation for work. What about the missed car accident because little things kept us from leaving whenever? It happened to me more than once. What about the big ones? What about the plane crash that the individual on the news tells the reporter? I was so upset that I had missed that flight, and now I am glad I did. How fortunate he is to have missed the flight. Do you think these obstructions just happen by chance? No, they do not. Your guides and your angels intercede for you. What about the people who end up where you would have been otherwise? They chose not to alter their plan. They chose to jump over their obstruction and bolt full speed ahead. Sorry. What about when you change your mind and you don't really have a reason? Or you just changed your mind because you had a bad feeling about it? I dare say your angels and your guides touched you hard. Unlike the vision Beruze just saw in the oval light, mine plays in my head. Sometimes it looks like it is happening just before dusk. Other sightings happen in complete white light that should be blinding but is not. Sometimes things jump at me when I close my eyes for sleep and startle me out of my slumber, or it plays like a video in my closed eyelids and I watch it before falling asleep. Sometimes I just follow my friends on trips that involves my effortless zooming upwards, passing and visiting palm-sized lights of various colors that light our way through the galaxy. Nobody needs to believe me. Fiction. You know that is not a part of the story, and she is being serious about what she sees. Some of us will understand what she's talking about, and some of us are not ready to yet understand what she's talking about. I was going to say something else, but that's what I was led to say, that some of us are not yet ready, because eventually all of the Creator's chosen people will see these things and live in these worlds. So I'm going to leave it there because I don't want to go off on another tangent and continue with what Denise is saying. Sometimes that familiar voice talks from the right side of my forehead. to the right side of the back of my head, accompanied by a high-pitched tone that does not interfere with my ability to clearly hear, although sometimes my right eye and the right side of my head hurt when the messages come by this route. As a child no more than 3 years old, I cannot tell you the number of times my mother or my father would look at me and say, one to the other, that picnic I read, you know. This child here is reading, you know. Or that picnic I listen, you know. This child is listening, you know. They knew I was listening to a conversation that did not include them, conversations to which I carefully listened. I understand now exactly what they saw because I now see it in one of my nieces. Note, kino and quinoa are phonetic variations of no. As an adult, my parents told me on multiple occasions when they noticed me as I watched the light that followed a person into a room. Now, on the advice of Kim O'Neill, I write what I hear as well as what I see. In recent years, a coworker, Stokely Davis, said to me while I was writing at work during a break, "You are in the zone." I looked at him quizzically. He repeated, "Yeah, you can tell, one can tell when you are in the zone. We all know. That's why sometimes I don't disturb you." We all get from our angels and guides a variation of interception messages, such as the message that Beruze just received from his spirit team. It is up to us to pay attention to our messages and determine what to do with them. I got one of those messages just the other day and I listened to the message and I'm glad I did. Beruze chooses to pay attention to his interception without making La Rochelle any wiser and without lying. "You know, I think you're right about going in the morning. Just as we are able to sense when people are up to no good in our lives, the people who are up to no good can see that we know." Likewise, La Rochelle, in sensing that Beruze knows he's up to no good, simply agrees, "Okay, whatever you say," with the knowing that both their spirits know. The Bible calls the knowing a discerning spirit. Beruze instructs him, "If you are still interested in helping me, then be here in the latter part of the morning, say about 10 o'clock. "All right," La Rochelle answers. Beruze once more turns his full attention to his son, who is asking for his mother. He tells the boy, "I miss your mama too," and does something he had a mind to do since he first retrieved the boy. He removes a bottle of juice from his magic sack, uncorks it, and puts it to the mouth of the boy, who then puts both his arms around the bottle. This frees up Beruze's hand to retrieve also for Abel a sandwich from the same magic sack. He had an intention to feed the boy from the moment he found him, but circumstances and emotions just did not allow for it. As much as he loves had he been the boy's mother, the boy would have been fed in the moment he was found. He realizes this and tells the boy, "Sorry I took so long to feed you." Blytis is a Blytis is as Beruze had left him, too weak, too tired, too hungry, too pathetic to try doing anything for himself. Thus he not only urinates, but he also defecates on himself. Yuck. Beruze chooses not to subject his boy to Blytis' excrement, so he makes a burlap bed for the both of them under a nearby tree. Early morning, while his son is still sleeping, Beruze dumps a full bucket of water on the sleeping slob in the back of the wagon. Blytis awakes, cursing through gritted teeth. You evil! "Time for you to get cleaned up," Beruze informs him. Today, about 108 hours since his family was taken from him, he has determined today is the day you return my family to me, Blytis rode in. With Blytis' feet and hands tied with enough slack in the rope for him to wash himself, Beruze jumps off the rear of the wagon, using his body weight to yank Blytis along with him. He falls on the grass near the left rear corner of the wagon. to which he is still tied around his waist. Beruze throws a bar of soap and a scrub brush at him, along with an incentive. Once you get cleaned up, I will give you something to eat. Beruze now jumps out of the wagon and from one of the barrels starts bailing water that he generously dumps onto Blytis' head. By the time the boy wakes up, Blytis and the wagon are clean, and although still tied, he is sitting quietly in the back of the wagon, with food enough to satisfy his physical hunger and an exchange of his repulsive clothes for clean and comfortable ones. Wearing a new felt hat and all, he now appears to be enjoying the sensation of sitting in a clean wagon, moving at a calm pace. Beruze explained to his son, who is sitting beside him, while Beruze controlled the reins. This fellow is coming along with us on our trip, but he is not friendly. Daddy doesn't want you to talk to him or look at him, okay? Okay, the boy trustingly agrees. Beruze does not ride back into town. Using a route about the outskirts of town, he seeks directions to the widow Perez estate, as though he were a distant relative looking for the home where his now deceased cousin once lived. When he sees the imposing house in a distant clearing, he delivers a very discreet message to Blytis that is spoken calmly and with a clarity that leaves no room for misinterpretation. Blytis wrote in, I have no intentions of leaving without my wife and my daughter. In addition to your money that I will use to buy my family back, you will use your charm, you will use your wit, you will use your sense of humor, you will use your cunningness, you will use your labor, you will use the law, you will use whatever it takes to get my family back to me. Do you understand me, Blytis Roden? It is not possible for me, the observer. This is Denise, the writer, speaking. It is not possible for me, the observer, to decipher whether Blytis is more fearful of Beruze's calm than he is of Beruze's words. His response of quiet fear does not bring me any closer to an answer. With a heightened sense that his future may be short, Blytis carefully considers his situation. I get to have my life back once you get your life. Once you get your life back. What you get, Blytis Roden, is the opportunity to not go to the gallows and the opportunity to not spend a day in jail. None of this is open for negotiation or discussion. He stops the horses a short distance away from the house, double checks the readiness of his revolver, returns it to his waistband, and proceeds to untie Blytis, while speaking very softly to him. I can see you from my periphery. I can see you without looking at you. If one of your arms moves, I will assume it is moving to attack me, and I will put a bullet right through your effing head. Please understand that if you get an itch, do not scratch it, as that will cost you your life. The next bit of counsel Beruze is about to add is really for his own mental benefit, knowing that Blytis could not care less about any psychological impact the would-be viewing of a murder may have on the not yet 3-year-old, what he deems non-human present. Don't be concerned about what my son will see. I am sure he has seen plenty in the last few days. Beruze returns to the driver's seat and pats about his waist to ensure his revolver is still well secured. He removes his son from arm's way by putting him down on the footboard and asking, can you fix one foot of Daddy's pants for him? The boy smiles, a smile that turns into a short giggle, followed by a hand at his mouth with a yes over a task he and his sister had assigned themselves since they learned how to crawl to Beruze. Near the front entrance to the house, there is an older black male Sorry about that. My alarm is going off, signaling me that it's time for me to start getting ready to go do what I do to keep a roof over my children's head and food in their bellies. But that will have to wait a little bit because I will be finishing this chapter. Near the front entrance of the house, there is an older black male slave in that position that white people of my day are still most comfortable seeing him, bent over a broom, sweeping, but in this case he is bent over a pitchfork, raking the yard. He stops to watch the wagon roll up to the front of the house and is ready to be of assistance in any way he can to the guests of his mistress. He maintains that familiar submissive stance black men and women in my day are expected to maintain, even when they are the ones in a position of social authority. I speak from my own experiences as a designated law enforcement officer. His assistance for alerting his mistress to her guests is not needed because as they pull up to the veranda, a black woman from the yard boys' social class opens the front door and steps out to await them. Beruze tells his son, "Stay here and wait for daddy, okay?" The boy nods, "Okay, daddy." Beruze gives the boy an apple, and to the black man present he says, "Make sure the horses stay here." To Blytis he turns his attention, "Make sure you give your very best performance. The show is yours." The woman who stepped out on the veranda ensures her mistress guests receive her warmest hospitality. "Welcome, sirs. I will inform mistress of your presence." She gently closes the door, leaving the men standing on the porch. Blytis tips his new hat in greeting the middle-aged white woman who comes to the door. "Good morning, Madame Perez." She gives a slight bow before stepping onto the veranda, where she waits for him to introduce himself and state the nature of their visit. "Please allow me to introduce myself. I am the Blytis Rodin of New Orleans, and this is Mr. Beruze Brunel, my long-standing business partner. How do you do?" asks the lady as she bows slightly and then waits for the purpose of their visit. "Madame," Blytis continues, "we are here about your new purchases." "Oh, the team of horses?" she supposes. No, madame, the niggers." "Oh," she says thoughtfully, "those. What about them?" "Well, madame, we would like to purchase them back from you." "Oh?" "Yes, madame. We are willing to give you a fair price, madame. My niggers are not for sale. I haven't even had a chance to put her out yet. Twin bearing, don't you know?" Beruze maintains his self-control. "Yes, yes, of course. That will be taken into consideration for the price you decide is reasonable." Blytis assures her after a quick glance at Beruze. "So why did you come all the way down here for my niggers?" "Well, see, madame, the truth is, they weren't meant to be sold." "What do you mean they weren't meant to be sold?" Not waiting for an answer, she continues, "Your partner here, B. Brunel, sold them to you. I did my homework before I bought them, and you, B. Rodin, signed the bill of sale to me." Blytis realizes she just gave him an opening. "Therein lies the mistake, madame. Madame, you see, this is not the B. Brunel you think he is. This is the brother of the B. Brunel on the receipt, the true owner. Essentially, his brother sold me stolen property, and I unwittingly sold them to you. What you have, ma'am, are stolen goods. Now, ma'am, I would like to keep the law out of this. Good businesswoman that I am, wanting to ensure my good reputation is not sullied by this misunderstanding, I have chosen to take time away from my affairs to travel here with this B. Brunel to make things right." I called him a businesswoman. Was that a slip of the tongue? These are my property. I bought them fair and square, and that I can prove to the law. Good day. Now you look here, Widow Perez. Beruze stopped just as suddenly as he started to speak. Behind the window are Honoru, Dureni, and Ani. Their presence stops him cold in his speech. Honoru is sprinkling flecks of gold from his jar. The two other beings look at Beruze while lowering their chins to their chests. Beruze's eyes follow their chins while mimicking their motion. This gives Blytis leave to continue working and the shrewd widow. With all due respect, ma'am, you probably could prove your ownership, but the law is not likely to fall on your side. You see, they are stolen property. Considering the distance of the people involved, it could take a while to sort things out. Things will get very dirty, ma'am. His brother may very well go to the gallows for selling stolen property, which might suit him well. And any youngins the breeder produces, my friend here, can and will claim legally. In the end, all your efforts will have gone to naught. We can fix all this right now by doubling the price you paid for them. Doubling your investment in less than 1 week is a pretty good deal, if I do say so myself. She conjectures. Mr. Rodin, passing to analyze the bruise each of her guests is wearing on his forehead, and deduces, must have been fighting over their favorite slave girl, before further addressing Blytis. I think there is more to this story, more to your wanting to buy them back, but since I stand to gain a healthy profit from your proposal, I guess I could be fair about this. Go the simplest route and let you purchase them back. She continues to reason within herself. I could buy 2 twin breeders from the sale of this one, and announces her decision. Ha! She is lazy anyhow, and she keeps pinching food from my kitchen to feed that girl of hers. I'll take your offer. She calls to her house girl, who knows when to withdraw her presence. Princess! When the black being presently appears, she orders, fetch me my writing pad and inkwell. Her slave's acknowledgment of the order, yes, missus, comes with a bow. No time is wasted in keeping her mistress waiting. The widow returns her attention to her unwanted guest, finally adding some southern hospitality while beckoning to the tea area on her porch. Gentlemen, won't you please have a seat? One would think Blytis were a welcome and invited guest by the way he sets his cup for a second serving of the tea served to them by the slave standing nearby, and by the way he continues to partake of the biscuits set on the small round table around which the three sits at the far right end of the veranda, while Beruze carefully reads over the contract regarding the sale of Ventice and Mabel Perez. With the paperwork completed, Beruze as the sole buyer on the bill of sale, Blytis rode in as the witness. Beruze checks every detail before he produces the money and hands it over to the seller. He is pleased with her financial transaction, as evidenced by her smile and slanted, slow, repeated nod of her head as she slowly checks through the stack of banknotes. Beruze does not waste time finishing his cup of tea. Where can I find them? He's already on his feet. I will have them brought to your wagon. She does not need to call out since her help is present, serving yet another cup of tea to Blytis. Send the new girl to the wagon and tell her to take the youngling with her. The house slave immediately moves to the order of her mistress. Yes, ma'am. Luckily, mistress has at least waited until the slave finished pouring the tea before giving the order. Otherwise, the girl's effort to obey commands at the same time the tea might have ended up on the tablecloth instead of in Blytis' cup. Beruze retrieves his son from the wagon. Holding the boy in his arms, he starts toward the back of the house to hasten the reunion with his wife and daughter. Blytis sees Beruze's preoccupation with the reunification of his family as his opportunity to make his getaway. He leaps into the driver's seat of the wagon and raises the whip to put the horses in motion with a "Hiya!" When he feels a pull on the whip, he turns to see the cause of the snag. Upon seeing the yard hand as the reason for the pull, the whip ended wrapped around the slave's hand. Blight is indignant at the audacity of this subhuman interfering with his actions, tries to backhand, strike him with the intention of forcing the slave to release the rope. However, the slave evades the stroke and swiftly pulls him out of the cart, landing him on his backside on the grass. Before informing him, Massa said, "Make sure the horses stay here." Blytis himself does not know whether he is more offended by this being challenging him or by his escape being thwarted by this being. He is now preoccupied with teaching this subhuman a lesson, a good one, a permanent one. Looking around to see what can be used as a teaching tool for delivering the lesson, he sees a pitchfork, the one this subhuman had been using. Leaning against the rear of the wagon from where he landed on the grass on his backside, he rises up on all fours and rushes for the fork, seeing that the yard hand is set in an attempt to disarm him by taking from him a fork that rivals him in height. He raises the long-handled metal object with strong curve endings for a powerful jab into the upper part of this out-of-order being, when bang, he stops to ensure he is still alive and turns to the direction from which the attention-grabbing sound originated. He sees the widow aiming her revolver at him. "The next one is going to go through your head, Blytis Roden, unless you put my pitchfork back where you got it and get off my property now." Blytis looks at his target. He looks at the mad woman. He considers his options and decides to return the pitchfork to where he found it, but not without making his feelings known. "Are you just going to allow that nigger to get so uppity with me?" The widow has an answer for him. "My pitchfork, my nigger, my land, my bullets, one wasted, won't waste a second one. Now get. Consider that your third warning." His feet as his only transport, he hastily makes his way down the trail he had traveled up by way of the horse-drawn wagon. He grudgingly leaves behind. Beruze heard the shot, but he is a man focused on securing his family before going to the rescue of anyone else. When the shot was fired, he was just about to embrace his wife and child. Having heard the shot, instead of embracing them and telling them how much he has missed them, he quickly hands the boy to his wife, slides his hand down the length of her arm, and rubs his daughter's forehead, pulls the gun out of his waistband, and using his other arm, fans them into line behind him. This is Denise, the writer, speaking again. I don't suppose anyone would believe me if I said I dreamt this some months ago. The reunification of a white man with a slave woman and her two children. I dreamt this before I spoke with Kim O'Neill, who told me to start writing about the things channeled to me. I dreamt it and dismissed it as something that just popped up in my dream. Now I wonder if it was indeed a dream or if it was a brief visit to a life lived. I have goosebumps because I told Denise she was in this story in a past life, and she didn't think so at the time. I'm sure she's not of that opinion anymore. Now in the proofreading process, I can tell the reader that what follows for the next 7 or so pages is another line of channeling to me. My guides and angels broke away from the story as it is being told, that is, by observing the lives of beings in a story set just about 100 years after black slavery had begun in America, to take me into a deeper level of channeling and to reveal myself to me. I now realize that they took me back to the 1700s to show me a small portion of the history of whom I am today. After my co authors returned to the story of my life embodied in Vent- Ventese. Now I'm having trouble saying this name. Ventese. They take me back and forth into my life as the spiritual being I am. And since that is how it is revealed to me, I deliver it in the same chronology. Here we go, starting with the questions I had in the moments after the story took me back to my dream. Why would this girl on a slave ship, Ani, take me all the way here to Venti's rescue? Why, with all the things that have happened with Beruze, would she take me to the side of this house with light blue, silver blue wooden paneling to see a white man reunite with a black woman and her children in that time period? I am a firm believer that if someone wants me to know something, she should just tell me. She just answered, it's about what I want you to tell others. It's about what from your life will help others. Truthfully, I don't see how this information will help others. I don't see how it will really make a difference in anyone's life. Is this stuff really going to help anyone to follow his or her spiritual path? She just answered, yes. There is more she wants me to know. When you saw the rescue in what you thought was a dream, you thought it was irrelevant to your life, even though you knew the woman was you. You sensed that it was a long road that the man had traveled, but you didn't know the details behind that snapshot of time. Now you know the story of how you got there. Wow. Now that I know, so what? She just answered, that woman you saw sitting on the porch, encircled in a flower garden, was also you. She's talking about a woman I saw about 3 years ago when I closed my eyes to go to sleep one night, and again just before I awoke the next morning. She was from a different time, probably a little later than the time about which I now write. 2 days after dreaming that dream, my brother Rob called to tell me that his sister died 2 days prior. Rob is a sibling born of my father met before my father met my mother. I wondered since then whether it was her that I saw. I wondered since then whether it was her that I saw going, sitting in a different place. Now I know. Ani wants me to talk about something that happened to me about 2 years ago. Something that happened with a male coworker. He hates black people with a distinct hatred. The type of hatred that allows racism to flourish. The type of hatred that allowed black slavery to thrive for over 400 years. The type of hatred that causes my spirit to go into high alert whenever he's around me. He has blonde hair and blue eyes and is not shy about vocalizing his social entitlements by virtue of having those ultimately desired features of humankind. I don't desire them. We were in the first point of entry into Canada, concourse at the Calgary International Airport. There was a break in the procession of people entering Canada, so some officers stood around talking in various small groups while I sat at my examination booth writing. I looked up from my counter and saw him standing with his eyes closed and his head bowed, leaning against one of the processing booths. I wondered whether he was okay. From his closed eye position, he knew I was looking at him because he sharply turned his head towards me and then opened his eyes to meet mine. What I saw were two black holes where eyes should have been. What is more, within 2 to 3 months, a current day Sleepy Hollow series started on television. It was well into the series that beings that appeared to be human would show empty sockets where eyes should be in the exact way my coworker showed his empty sockets to me. How is that for an art? How is that for art intimidate it for art imitating life? Hmm. I am told by Kim O'Neill that this is my last go round on Earth. I don't want to be here. I have never been comfortable here. My life here has been hell. Nonetheless, I know I have a job to do. I thought my purpose was to leave a record of racism in this time period, a record to show where we are as a society since the abolition of slavery. I still feel this is my purpose. However, since we are spiritual beings more than we are physical beings, and since these beings, Ani, Anaru, Dureni, and Jureni, and a host of others are in my life to guide me in my purpose. If my work regarding racism never bears fruit in society, as I would like, then at least it got me to a place of spiritual enlightenment for myself. My spirit will not leave here broken because I realize that earth is a place of spiritual warfare, and where we are right now is where we are meant to be in this warfare. The spiritual occurrences about which I write are nothing new to those who know. People like my coworker who showed his soul to me are beings who know. That day, as I sat at my workstation in 2013, was not the first time that a coworker showed his true self to me. He first showed his spiritual self to me on the Friday morning of July 2012, as he, another coworker, and I watched the news showing the massacre perpetrated by James Holmes, who walked into a movie theater in the United States and opened gunfire on pregnant women, children, and infants. Of that act of terror perpetrated by evil embodied while sitting in his law enforcement uniform, my coworker, while clapping his hands, said, I have to applaud him for having the guts to pull it off. He has my applause for having the guts to actually go through with it. That takes guts. A few minutes passed as we watched some more and spoke about similar cases, most notably the Columbine and the McDonald's shooters. My coworker started to applaud again, adding, only 50 people? That's not a lot, but I still have to applaud him for having the guts to actually pull it off. He was so in tune with the murderer Holmes, who made a name for himself by snuffing out the lives of others, that right there in the ready room, he named the title that the media would shortly give to the murderous lunatic. They're going to call him the Batman shooter, that being the movie the crowd had gathered to watch. How I responded to this shaking of my psyche and what became of me as a result of my daring to report what I observed can be found in my series entitled Black in Blue in Canada. Incidentally, guess who was one of the first two officers to be armed at my port? That made him the first male officer armed of the approximately 107 officers working at the port at the time. I was not the first female, nor the second, nor the third. I didn't really care to be armed. Nonetheless, my point here is that he feels safe revealing himself to me, both selves, because he knows there is not much I can do with that information. He knows I am the one who will look like a being from another world if I were to share the information with people around me. People believe that of me anyway. They've always thought me to be strange, nuts, weird. I'm actually not strange, nuts, or weird. I simply respond to the world around me in a way that allows me insightful reality. That allows me insightful relatedness into dimensions of the world beyond what my brain can perceive. Speaking of strange, weird other worlds, all these shows and books about beings from another place, other planets, ghosts. Does anyone really believe the physical brain just conjures up all of these places and beings? Writers tell you it's fiction because they do not want you to think they are nuts. Some want to protect their world. Some want you to think they are geniuses because they are able to come up with unique stuff. Since most of us already believe it is just their imagination, we are diverted from looking into how they come up with their stuff. Our ignorance allows them to keep their secret unmolested. Let me tell you something. From acting to singing to writing to math to science to inventing to all of what happens to be human creativity is delivered to channelers to present to this world, to present to this world. And that is what they all are, channelers, manifesting the work they came to do. Some of them get to stay on a bit after their work is done. Some leave in what seems like the middle of their work. They do not. Their work is done. Some get to leave when it appears their work is done. It is the end of their portion of the work, but it is by no means the end of the work. The people of this world will continue to evolve until the spiritual warfare is finished. Some will come back to fight in other battles, not unlike those shown in the Sleepy Hollow series. The writer, the one with the original idea for the series, tapped into something and presents it as television entertainment. And people buy it as such simply because they are not spiritually enlightened. Once you become spiritually conscious, you will realize that these people, the artists, the musicians, the dancer, the physicist, the psychic, the doctor, the writer, the inventor, are no more important than you are in the grand scheme of purpose on earth. As I told my dad in October 2012, during one of our deep conversations on his veranda in Jamaica, you may not see the purpose in your life, in this life, here on earth, but your purpose was for me. You came here as a guide for me. You came here to help me. In that conversation, I had also asked him, "Don't you remember me?" He answered thoughtfully, with a slight shake of his head, "No." I asked him the question because in that moment, I got a glimpse into a meeting in another time and another place, and I remembered him as though I was his mother. He did not remember me from thence, but he knew. Many times he said to his brother, Uncle Pum, in my presence, "She is my mother, you know. She is my mother." He said that thinking that I protected him like a mother, but he was tapping into something beyond his brain. To this, "No," I responded, "you will soon see who I am." How was I to know he would be gone 8 months later? There is that number 8 again, my favorite number, and that he would indeed know me from ages past. Why is it that more than 2 years later, on March 3rd, 2015, someone whom I've never even knew existed at the time of the conversation with my dad, Kim O'Neill, was able to tell me this? You and your dad knew each other before, in a past life. You were friends, just friends, and you came here to work together. How was she able to pick up on a conversation that my dad and I had had years earlier? A conversation I never mentioned to her or anyone else. Some years before that conversation with my dad, we had another conversation on the subject. He had gone to funeral after funeral that year. After the funeral of a particular woman from his district in Jamaica, I had one of our daily telephone conversations with him. I sensed he was considering his own mortality and the meaning of his life. I knew how he felt, but I wanted him to express his thoughts without feeling that he was unloading on me. He was never one to unload on anyone. Therefore, I asked, "How does that make you feel, seeing everybody in your age group leaving?" He answered, "It's depressing." "Ah, child, I was well over 40 years old. It's depressing." The woman whose funeral my dad had attended was not a friend. She was actually an adversary, the battle axe, the talebearer of the district. Her life seemed to have been without purpose. I assured him, it may seem that her life was without purpose, but I assure you, she had a purpose. It could even have been to be the grandmother or the great grandmother of someone who will do great things on earth, the great grandmother of someone who may not even be able to make the genealogical connection to her. Her purpose was not about her, but instead the work she came to do. Her work is done, and now she's gone. That was about 5 years ago. Today I know her work lives, and I am a benefactor of it. I was in Jamaica recently. I am having a house built there. This woman's granddaughter is about a decade younger than I. She was at my house one day when I arrived unannounced. I was not pleased with the progress of the construction. Therefore, a smile was not on my face. My response to her greeting was not warm. Nonetheless, within a half hour, she came to the small house. Nonetheless, within a half hour, she came to the small house I live in on site, which had been used for over 6 months. Which had been unused for over 6 months. Saw me cleaning it and offered her services. In my best blunt manner, I responded, "The evening is almost gone. What can you do?" Calmly, she responded, "Anything. Sweep, dust, clean, whatever." "Okay, come on in," I said, and proceeded to unlock the grill door to let her in. She had that place dusted, swept, and mopped within an hour. Within an hour. I was okay with the floor. She was not. She asked for money to buy floor polish so she could do a better job the following day. And she did indeed do a better job the following day. Each day after that, she either called or came by or both to see if I was okay. If I needed to go anywhere and I called her to accompany me, she dropped whatever she was doing and came with me. She bargained for me in the marketplace, stood up for me with aggressive taxi drivers to ensure they did not rip me off, and she ensured I did not waste my money on goods I could do without. In essence, she appointed herself as my protector without my asking. Yes, I rewarded her generously, but that is not the point. The point is this: she was there for me as a real source of support. Even though her grandmother had lived a life that appeared to have been without purpose, she was there for me in a way that my siblings, as a result of their hatred for me, which is rooted in envy and greed, are not, with the exception of Lennox. Add me to that exception as well. Her being there for me does not mean my life is any more important than hers. My life is most important to me, and she was there to aid me in my life by virtue of her grandmother having lived. I learned something about the human spirit from being around the granddaughter of that seemingly unremarkable woman who visited Earth 2 generations ago and left. I had thought that because of the dark life this young lady had had, darker than my own young life, so dark she refuses to even brush the surface of it, so dark that she snapped, "I don't want to talk about it," when I asked her why she left high school just weeks before graduation. Humor could not be found in her. One day, however, I was in a taxi with her, and somehow the conversation turned to her domestic affairs. I do not exaggerate when I say I laughed so hard I nearly peed my pants. I cannot remember anyone in Hollywood making me laugh so hard. I was still laughing at 2 o'clock in the morning, hours after hearing her stories, when I was alone in my house and remembered them. Knowing that I write and seeing how her stories produce uncontrollable laughter in me during the telling of her stories, she said to me I could write a book, couldn't I? I answered her honestly, "You could write a few, and I am sure they would all be bestsellers." Her ability to relate her domestic affairs in such a comedic way came spontaneously, without rehearsal. a genuine ability to move one to laughter by honestly telling of occurrences in her life. That is natural talent. That is the ability of the human spirit to reach for the light through the crack in the darkness. I cannot count the number of people whom I have come across whose talents far exceed those of whom we see in the limelight, the stars. However, for whatever reason, time, money, lack of contracts, lack of focus, or not their purpose in this life, their abilities remain untapped. Could my purpose in her life be to help her find her purpose? Could my goal of turning my home into a center for people to leave their stories behind help her to document her life and leave it behind? My relationship with her goes back to the year 2005, yet I had never seen that side of her. This just goes to show that the people we put on pedestals, giving them billions of dollars to entertain us, are not necessarily more talented than the person who cleans your toilets. Whether public or private, what makes a difference is opportunity, or more to the point, the limelight is not, for example, the toilet cleaner's purpose in this life. And as significant as one situation in life may appear, that insignificant situation does not make that life any less purposeful to the Creator. Our egos get in the way of what we are by telling us that what we are able to do make us better than others. As human beings, we put particular value on the work people do because we're not able to do it ourselves, or so you may think. But let me tell you this, the great orchestrator of our purpose for being here does not see it that way. When your job of cleaning the toilet or of absorbing shit like a toilet is done and you go home, he is no happier to see the inventor of the internet or the inventor of the wheel or of sliced bread than he is to see you, the shit absorber. Understand that, please. Your purpose, the job you came here to do for the Creator, is important for your physical life as well as for your spiritual life. That is, knowing you have a job to do gives you the energy you need to move your physical body to accomplish your mission. And that is how this world, this physical world, will get to the place that He is aiming for it to reach. It will get there with or without you. Understand that if you don't do what you are sent to do, He will send someone else to do it. His purpose will get done. The relationship I have with the granddaughter of my parents' adversary is an example of how the Creator will mend all relationships amongst racial division. Fight as the racist may to keep his blood pure, mixing is inevitable, and it is a good thing. It will be one less thing over which people are divided. Which race is superior in what? No, she and I are not of different races, but hatred is hatred. And if the hatred between my parents and this young woman's grandmother can be overcome in just one generation, then what makes us think racial hatred cannot be overcome? As I said, this go round might be for my growth. It is probably the reason I have so much time to myself, and yet not enough time to do all the things I need to do, and not enough time to fight all the battles coming at me. Anyhow, let's get back to Beruze and the journeying Ani, Durini, and Anaru. Now with his revolver drawn, following the side of the house for cover and concealment, he reaches the corner at the front. There he pulls the gun up to his chest, takes a quick peek around to view the front yard, and pulls his head back to his body. He takes a second peek, long enough to see Blytis moving swiftly down the path, the widow and her female attendant standing on the porch calmly watching him, the male slave holding the reins of the horses and soothing the one closest to him. Ventise, who was beaming with excitement when she saw her husband and child, had opened her mouth wide to make a sound of joy, but the noise of the gun caused her to close it in wonderment, forcing her to pay immediate and close attention to Beruze's lead. She now stands quietly behind him, pacifying her children, while alertly awaiting his next move. Not knowing the details of his being there, her brain is like a sponge waiting to absorb whatever liquid it finds itself in. She observed Beruze putting away the gun, but she is still not sure she can breathe an air of relief. He turns and embraces all three of them, kissing them one after the other. He pauses to look at them and tells them, "We are going home." His family is not really free. They would never be free. As I know, freedom, with all its racial restrictions on me, their freedom is limited to his being alive. Mine is limited to the superficial laws that protect me in a society, in a world that is still very hostile towards my skin. That was Denise, the writer, speaking in the last paragraph. With his family in the wagon and his acknowledgement of the being who kept his horses there, who now stands by watching with satisfaction while still holding his pitchfork. Beruze tips his hat to the widow and her female subordinate, who are standing on the porch, before he pulls on the reins and clicks his tongue against his jaw for the horses to start moving down the track to the main road. As the wagon passes, Blythe is moving slowly enough for him to hop on, which he does not. Beruze has a few words for him. "See you when you get home, Blytis, rodent. We have business to conduct." They are now well into their journey back to Baton Rouge. "Thank you for coming to get us, all five of us," Ventise tells Beruze, while cradling her children and eyeing her abdomen where she sits beside him in the wagon. He is calculating her math. 5, and now suddenly realizing in that moment his eyes catches hers and his mouth bursts open. 5? Yes. Dumbfounded, he cannot speak his question, so she answers without waiting for his mouth to catch up with his brain. 3 months. I was going to tell you the night I was taken. But he kisses the rest of the sentence out of her mouth. 5. He checks again. Yes, she assures him with a chuckle. The number has not changed. The man who had been so dejected that he was able to live alongside Blytis in his filth is now giddy with happiness, making sounds instead of actual words in the process of telling his children of the anticipated arrival of their siblings. I am going to have to leave it here for now and do a part 2 because I have to go to work and I still have to shower again. So we'll pick it up later tonight and finish up on chapter 13 later on.